Quantum Physics in the Australian Bush, sponsored by Science, Innovation and Communication at School. Today's question is, can you explain cells? Cells are important because they're the basis of all life. Every plant, animal, bacteria that is alive is made from cells. So cells can either be single ones like bacteria or a group of system of cooperating cells which form an organism like you and me. All cells are essentially a bag of water. Imagine a lunch bag, you fill it with water, zip it up, and that's your cell. Now cells live and do their stuff, but after a while they suddenly freeze and start doubling their insides, so they double all their parts, then they pinch in two to make a second copy, and you can see this in the animation of bacteria here below. So if the cells are dividing and doing and living, they require energy, and they get an energy source from the following three options. One is they can absorb light and manufacture their own food, or they can actually just absorb food around it, or they can actually eat food. But because they're a bag, they have to eat food by a special thing called phagocytosis. And so on the left here you can see a white cell chasing bacteria. You can see it actually moving. This is quite interesting that cells can actually by themselves move. And on the right you can see a cell eating another cell by actually wrapping itself around it, pinching it up, and actually absorbing the bacteria inside. So now you've got the picture of cells having energy and moving about the place. Now let's look from a quantum mechanical or physical aspect how they're made. Now this is not in the literature, but this is how I think about it. Cells have four basic components. One is the water filling, and they require this for chemicals to move around inside themselves for reactions to take place. And then they have membranes, the most important being the outer membrane bag. But they've got other membranes, and inside it they've got little rods, and you can see the rod that this little chap on the right is walking along. And if you think of this, it's more like a tent structure to build itself. You can see the white cell moving its tent structure around. Also in this fluid they've got useful chemicals. Of course they need this to make the membranes, the rods. They also have nanorobots, and very few people talk about this. But on the right here you can see a kinesine, and it's walking along a nanotube. And the small ankles are only a few atoms wide, and you can see the actual individual atoms as it pulls a large membrane sac along. So this is how chemicals move inside your cells. These little nanobots operate all the time. On the left you see a series of nanobots working in concert to actually write your DNA. So one copy comes in towards it, and two copy comes out. One is a simple copy. The other copy is far more complicated. It has to copy in reverse for it to do it. And so you've got a series of little nanorobots all working together very quickly to assemble your DNA. Inside your cell are these little rods called microtubules. And they're not actually made by nanorobots. They're little self-assembling little bits which on a chemical starter trigger shoot off and assemble each other. So they're the internal highway if they want to get a piece of nutrient from one part of the cell to the other, or if the cell itself wants to move, it can actually manufacture these tubules to move around. And it's really important that these tubules are actually inside your neurons, inside your brain, and they're the way that memories are shaped and thought of. Besides these nanotubes or tubules, you have the nanorobots inside your cell, and the common name for a nanorobot is a protein. It starts off with three bases or three letters of your DNA together form a little code or something called codon, and each one of these three letters specify 1 out of 20 amino acids. So as your DNA sequence goes, it's actually a sequence of proteins. The DNA is an assembly or a recipe for a protein. So it churns out from the DNA, it gets read and produces a string of amino acids. There are only 20 types. Now, don't worry, we're going to cover this a bit more in the next couple of slides. But these amino acids are strung together when the acid and the amino group fuse together, emitting a water, but chain together a bit like beads on a string. And this forms an infinite long, or a fairly long loop. Strings then get folded into a nanorobot, or parts of a nanorobot, which come together. The ATP, or energy biscuits as they call them, that's not the official name, flow and charge these nanorobots and appear to animate them. On the left we have a chart of the 20 amino acids, and they have to be pumped into the cell so they're ready to be assembled into a protein. And you can see them. The white corresponds to hydrogen, the grey to carbon, the blue to oxygen, and the red to nitrogen. The yellow is a sulfur. So all of these form together and they get linked together a bit like Lego blocks, but only stacked up in a string. On the right you have the link between the DNA code, the GUAT, that's RNA on that one, and how it produces the actual different groups of amino acids. Now the amino acids can be attracted to water or repel water, or they can be acidic or basic. And you've got these little white lines in here which tells you to stop or start a sequence in a protein. So it reads the DNA between the two stops and that produces a protein. This slide here shows the actual chemical reactions. So the nitrogen is more positive and the acid, this CO2, is more negative. And what happens is that it comes together and water gets removed. Now the top diagram I feel shows you a bit more clearly what happens to the water. The bottom diagram shows you in a bit more colour. It's a bit easier to see. So this is the best I could find on the net about a molecule, a protein, folding itself from a string into a nanomachine. It's hard to see, but you can see it go from a string, start to coil up and recoil, change its shape and form itself into a little machine. This is rather interesting. This is your muscle fibres moving together. So it's in every heartbeat, every breath this is happening. And these machines are working together with nutrients flying in and out, creating a charge so it moves forward to meet a positive charge. So you're actually lifting up a weight with your arm, or walking, you're using little nanoelectric motors, billions of nanoelectric motors. I thought I'd include this slide as it's food for thought. So this is a thought actually going through your brain, going along a fibre, activating a nerve. The interesting thing is, as you have memories, these little nanotubules grow and change the hairs, and so your actual thought, your existence, is actually from the way these nanotubes grow inside your head. So what are the take-home messages from what are cells? Well, all life is made from cells, and they're little bags of self-popping bags of water. Those little bags are home of lots of little nanorobots which go around doing the functions. And these nanorobots are from proteins folded from a string of 20 types of amino acids. Now these robots have their blueprint in your DNA. Thanks for watching, and any feedback I'll try and improve.